She's lying. Get this lowly waitress out of here who allowed someone like that to set foot in the Sterling Enterprises conference room. The angry, almost desperate growl tore through the already leaden atmosphere in the 52nd floor conference room of Sterling Enterprises, where multi-million-dollar decisions had once been made with a single frown. Harrison Thorne, the powerful board member with his slicked-back gray hair and bespoke suit worth tens of thousands of dollars, was now as red as a fighting cock, pointing at the young woman standing calmly in the middle of the room, who only minutes earlier had thrown razor-sharp evidence, threatening to tear apart the velvet curtain covering the rotten empire he had built. Facing that fury, Sarah Miller, in a simple navy blue business dress that accentuated her slender figure and the determination in her blue eyes, only slightly tightened her grip on the thin document in her hand, as if it were the only shield she had against the wolves baring their fangs. Beside her, Alexander Sterling, the young CEO, her nominal husband, tried to hold back a sigh. The initial surprise on his handsome face, now replaced by a complex, unpredictable emotion as the play directed by his own mother, and he as an unwilling actor, was now being pushed to a climax that even he could not have foreseen. The atmosphere in the conference room on the 52nd floor of Sterling Enterprises was as thick and heavy as the gray sky of New York City about to rain. Alexander Alex Sterling, the young CEO of the prestigious family conglomerate, felt his Armani tie tighten around his throat. His eyes swept over the powerful faces sitting around the long, polished mahogany table. Most looked serious. A few shook their heads, but the triumphant, gloating look of Harrison Thorne, the most senior and cunning member of the board of directors, could not be hidden. Today, Thorne seemed certain to win. "As you can see," Thorne said, his voice steady but full of self-satisfaction. Last quarter's report showed a significant decline in real estate investment profits. And the Horizon Heights project that our CEO has championed so much has cost over $50 million with no sign of improvement. He paused, glanced at Alex, a sneer on his face. "I'm afraid it's time to re-examine our current leadership." A few of the other members began to murmur in agreement. Alex clenched his fists under the table. He knew Horizon Heights was in trouble, but he also sensed something fishy behind Thorne's push and the sudden drop in numbers. He needed more time, but Thorne and his cohorts weren't giving it to him. They were trying to push him out of the CEO seat his father had built. Therefore, Thorne continued, his voice full of false authority, "I propose a vote of no confidence in CEO Alexander Sterling." Just then, a sudden sound broke the tension. The heavy oak door of the conference room swung open. All eyes turned to the door. Sarah Miller walked in. She wore a simple but elegant navy blue office dress, her chestnut brown hair neatly tied in a bun. Her face was bare of makeup, just a light touch of lipstick, but her blue eyes sparkled with determination and unusual intelligence. In her hand was a thin stack of documents. She was completely unlike the image of the Cinderella waitress that people whispered behind their backs when they learned that Alex, one of New York's most successful single CEOs, had suddenly married a girl working at a cheap diner in Queens. Alex looked at her, stunned. He had no idea what she was doing here. They had agreed that she would not interfere in his affairs. Eleanor Sterling, his mother, who was also in the room as a major shareholder, raised her eyebrows slightly, but a small, almost imperceptible smile played across her lips. Thorne frowned, his voice snapping. "Ms. Miller, this is a board meeting. You have no business being here." Sarah was unfazed by Thorne's spite. She walked straight to the table and set the papers down. Her voice was calm and clear, echoing throughout the silent conference room. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for this intrusion. I am Sarah Sterling, wife of Alexander Sterling." She paused, looking Thorne straight in the eye. "And I have here some important evidence regarding the transparency of some recent transactions, especially those directly overseen and promoted by Mr. Harrison Thorne. This evidence may explain the unusual decline you just mentioned, as well as shed light on many other issues." The air in the room seemed to freeze. Thorne glared at Sarah, his face starting to turn red. Alex, from surprise to a glimmer of hope. He didn't know what Sarah had in store, but her confidence, Her composure in the face of a cunning fox like Thorne made him feel a strange feeling, a sudden trust. Sarah opened the file, her voice still even. "First, I want to talk about the Phoenix Tower project in Dubai, a project that Mr. Thorne convinced the council to invest $200 million in 6 months ago, promising huge profits." Her story began to reveal mismatched numbers, shell companies set up to move money, suspicious signatures. The room held its breath. All eyes were on the young woman who, just months earlier, had been struggling with invoices and working long shifts. Now she stood at the center of Sterling Enterprises' power, ready to turn the tables. 3 months ago, Alex sat across from his mother, Eleanor Sterling, in the large library of the family's Upper East Side mansion. Afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating the antique mahogany bookshelves. Eleanor, a woman in her 60s who still retained a sharp, authoritative air, set her teacup down on a Wedgwood saucer. "Alexander," she began, her voice expressionless, "I want you to get married." Alex almost choked on his coffee. "What did you say?" "You heard me. Within 3 months, a wedding." Eleanor looked her son straight in the eye, not allowing any objections. "My health has not been good lately. I want to see you settle down before it's too late. Besides, do you remember the clause in your father's will? You will only truly take full control of Sterling Enterprises once you are married and have a potential heir." Alex sighed. He knew his mother. Once she made up her mind, it was hard to change her mind. Her health was probably only part of the reason, but the will was real. His father, a traditionalist, had always believed that a married man would be more responsible and stable in managing a large business. "Mom, I'm so busy with the company. Thorne and his faction are making things difficult. I don't have time to date, let alone get married." Alex tried to find a reason to delay. "Since Thorne is eyeing you, you need to strengthen your position," Eleanor replied immediately. "A married man will be more trustworthy to the council. They will see you as a mature, responsible person. As for the partner, I don't ask you to find a noble lady or the daughter of a business partner. I'm tired of high-class girls who only aim for the name Sterling. I want someone practical, someone who can stand by you, not for money." Alex felt a weight on his shoulders. He had been through a few relationships, but they all ended in disappointment. The women he had dated seemed to care more about his bank account and lavish parties than about who he was as a person. Love, to him, had become an impractical luxury. "So what do you want me to do? Post an ad looking for a wife," Alex said sarcastically. Eleanor was undeterred. "I trust you are smart enough to figure it out. 3 months. Alex. No more. No less." That night, Alex couldn't sleep. He looked out the window of his luxurious penthouse at the New York night sky. Pressure from his mother, pressure from work, pressure from the intrigues of the board. He needed a quick, effective solution. And then an idea flashed: a marriage of convenience. He would find a simple woman, not demanding, agree to clear terms, a year, maybe 2. Then they would divorce amicably. She would have the money. He would have the stability his mother and the board wanted. A fair deal. Fate, or perhaps Eleanor's clever planning, had brought Alex to the Cozy Corner, a cozy little diner in Astoria, Queens, on a humid Saturday afternoon. He'd come there on the recommendation of an old friend who said it had the best apple pie in the city. In truth, he just wanted to escape the stuffy air of Manhattan for a while. Sarah Miller was dealing with a difficult customer who insisted that his soup wasn't hot enough. She listened patiently, then smiled, a genuine, gentle smile. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Sir, I'll have it reheated in the kitchen. Would you like some bread while you wait?" Her calm and professional handling of the situation impressed Alex. He watched her work. Fast, efficient, always smiling at customers despite looking tired. There was something about her that drew him in, a natural beauty, an underlying strength. When the bar was empty, Alex called Sarah over. He didn't beat around the bush. "Miss Miller, I have a proposition for you," Alex said bluntly, his voice calm. "I want a wife, a contract marriage, lasting 1 year. After that, we'll divorce. You'll get $500,000, enough to settle your financial affairs and get a fresh start." Sarah froze. She looked at Alex as if he had spoken an alien language. $500,000. That was a lot of money to her. But marrying a stranger. "For money, sir." "Sterling. Is it Sarah tried to keep her composure?" "I don't understand. Why me? I need someone smart, practical, and not too complicated. I've been watching you. You have those qualities," Alex said, his voice even, as if he were discussing a business deal. He briefly explained the pressures of family and work. Sarah felt a surge of pride. "Not too complicated. You mean I'm simple? Easy to manipulate." Alex realized he had used the wrong word. "That's not what I meant. I mean, I'm not looking for a romantic relationship. This is a deal. You help me. I'll help you." He saw the weariness in her eyes, the calluses on her hands from work. He guessed she had her own burdens. Sarah couldn't sleep that night. Alex's offer haunted her. $500,000. That amount of money could pay off her family's debts, help her mother get better medical treatment, and put her younger brother, Ben, through college without having to work a miserable part-time job. She had given up her dream of studying graphic design to support her family since her father died. Her life was a series of non-stop workdays. But in exchange for a sham marriage, she saw the loneliness and weariness in the eyes of Alex Sterling, the rich and powerful man. He was not quite the heartless nouveau riche she had first imagined. The next morning, Sarah called Alex. "I agree," she said, her voice firm. "But I have conditions. First, respect. You have to treat me like a person, not an object. Second, no physical contact, unless we both really want it. Third, I still want some privacy, to see my family and friends." Alex was surprised by her frankness and her terms. He agreed. A detailed contract was drawn up by his lawyer. 2 weeks later, Sarah Miller, the waitress, officially became Mrs. Sterling. Alexander Sterling and Sarah Miller's wedding was a quiet affair in a small chapel on the outskirts of town, attended only by Eleanor, Sarah's brother Ben, and a few of Alex's closest friends. There was no media, no pretentious high-class guests. Sarah wore a simple but elegant white dress that Eleanor had chosen for her. Alex, in his smart suit, looked a little awkward as he read his vows. So did Sarah. They looked like two actors trying to get into character. After their wedding, Sarah moved into Alex's lavish penthouse on Fifth Avenue, overlooking Central Park. The apartment was 10 times larger than the small apartment she and Ben had been living in. Everything was flashy, expensive, and foreign. At first, Sarah felt out of place. She and Alex lived under the same roof but were strangers. They had separate bedrooms, only seeing each other at breakfast or when they needed to act in front of Eleanor. Eleanor seemed quite pleased with her new daughter-in-law. She instructed Sarah in the basic rules of conduct in the upper class, how to dress, how to talk. Sarah learned very quickly. She did not try to become someone else, but she knew she needed to adapt to complete the role. Ben was initially worried about his sister, but when he saw that Sarah was still herself, only with better living conditions, he was somewhat reassured. Sarah's first official appearance as Mrs. Sterling was at a charity ball sponsored by Sterling Enterprises, held at the prestigious Plaza Hotel. She wore a jade green evening gown personally chosen by Alex. Her hair was elaborately styled. Next to Alex, she looked really outstanding, but inside she was extremely nervous. Harrison Thorne was one of the first to greet them. He looked Sarah up and down with an undisguised disdain. "Hello, Alex, and this must be the new Mrs. Sterling Thorne said, emphasizing the word new. "What a pleasant surprise. Miss Miller, is it, I hear you used to work in some diner?" Sarah felt her cheeks burn, but she tried to keep her composure. "Yes, Mr. Thorne. I'm Sarah Sterling. Nice to meet you." "Oh, Sterling. Yes, a prestigious name." Thorne sneered. "Hope you get used to life here soon. It's a far cry from carrying plates." Alex squeezed Sarah's hand, discreetly. "Harrison, Sarah is my wife. I expect you to respect her." Alex's voice was cold. He didn't like Thorne, and he didn't like his attitude towards Sarah. Even though the marriage was an act, Sarah now bore his name, and he wouldn't allow anyone to insult her so publicly. Throughout the evening, Sarah felt curious glances and whispers. Some were fake friendly, others were openly contemptuous. She knew that, in their eyes, she was just a gold digger, a Cinderella who had just gotten her prince. But Sarah didn't let that get her down. She watched, listened, memorized every face, every attitude, especially Harrison Thorne and those close to him. There was something about them that made her feel uneasy. Sarah's life now revolves around social events, parties, and meetings with Alex's business associates. At first, she feels like a puppet, following Alex and Eleanor's orders. But gradually, Sarah begins to use these opportunities to observe. With the practical and perceptive mind of someone who has struggled with life, she sees things differently. Occasionally, Alex would leave work documents at home or make work calls while she was nearby. Sarah wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but the information that slipped through her ears began to form a vague picture. She noticed that Harrison Thorne was often pushing seemingly high-risk investment projects that promised quick returns but lacked solid foundations. The financial reports that Alex occasionally brought home, if she happened to glance at them, sometimes had numbers that were inexplicably out of sync, even in the smallest of details. One afternoon, while waiting for Alex in his office to go to an event, Sarah overheard a conversation between Thorne and his secretary on the phone. Thorne sounded angry, talking about moving money around and having to cover up before the shareholders' meeting. Then she noticed a thin file left on the sofa in the waiting room, titled Phoenix Tower Project, Confidential Progress Report. Curious, she flipped through the pages. Numbers, unfamiliar company names, complicated cash flow diagrams. She didn't understand it all, but her intuition told her something was wrong. When Alex returned, she quickly put the file back where it belonged. She didn't say anything to him. She didn't have any concrete evidence, and she was afraid he would think she was nosy, or worse, suspect she had some kind of agenda, but the seed of doubt had been planted. One evening, Alex came home in a bad mood. Sterling Enterprises stock had just plummeted on false rumors of a failed merger and acquisition M&A deal. He threw his briefcase on the sofa, loosened his tie, and poured himself a stiff drink. Sarah saw him like that. She hesitated for a moment, then spoke up. "Is there something wrong at the company?" Alex looked at her in surprise. They rarely spoke privately, especially about work. He sighed. "Just some silly rumors. But it's enough to stir up the market." "Are there any grounds for those rumors?" Sarah asked, her voice soft. "Not really. But Thorne is using it to pressure me." Alex took a big gulp of wine. "Sometimes I get tired of it all." Sarah sat down across from him. "I don't know much about business," she said, "but I do know that when people deliberately spread rumors, they're usually trying to hide something bigger, or they're afraid of something." Alex looked at her, really looked at her. Sarah's words were simple, yet so matter-of-fact. It was like a cool breeze blowing through his troubled mind. "At the meeting today," Sarah said, "I overheard Mr. Thorne talking to someone on the phone, very urgently, about getting things done before this all comes to light. I don't know if that was related." Alex frowned. He remembered Thorne's unusual behavior lately, his overexertion of certain projects. Sarah's words, though only a small piece of information, connected with his vague suspicions. "Thank you, Sarah," Alex said, more sincerely. That helped. It was the first time they had a real conversation, not an act. That night, Alex thought a lot about Sarah. She was more than just a waitress he hired. She was smart, sophisticated, and surprisingly strong. He began to wonder if this arranged marriage was really just a cold transaction. In the following days, the atmosphere between Alex and Sarah gradually changed. They began to talk more, not just about superficial issues. Sarah told Alex about her family, about her unfulfilled dreams. Alex, for the first time in many years, also shared the pressures and loneliness he faced as the head of a large corporation. One evening, while they were watching an old movie on TV, Sarah burst out laughing at a funny situation. Her smile was bright and natural, making Alex feel his heart flutter unexpectedly. He realized that he was actually attracted to this woman, the woman he had once despised. Romance, which he thought had long since died, was quietly rekindling in his heart. Sarah became increasingly aware of Harrison Thorne's activities. She could no longer ignore the unusual signs she had noticed. One day, she ran into a young receptionist named Emily, who had worked the night shift at the Cozy Corner and was now a junior administrative assistant at Sterling Enterprises. Emily had taken a liking to Sarah for her kindness in the past. During a casual conversation, Emily lamented the long hours she had been working lately, sorting through documents for Mr. Thorne's office, especially those related to offshore subsidiaries. Emily said she had seen large invoices for consulting services sent to companies she had never heard of, based in tax havens like the Cayman Islands or Panama. "I find it strange, Sarah," Emily said softly. "All those companies have fancy names, but their addresses are vague and they don't have websites. And Mr. Thorne said to keep it a secret and not show it to anyone." Sarah's intuition told her that this was an important clue. She asked Emily to discreetly photocopy some of those receipts, or any documents that looked suspicious, if possible. Emily was hesitant at first, afraid of getting into trouble. But because of her trust and affection for Sarah, she agreed to help. A few days later, Emily slipped Sarah a thin stack of photocopied documents. It contained copies of several consulting contracts and invoices between Sterling Enterprises and shell companies controlled by Thorne, totaling tens of millions of dollars over the past year. The services were described in general terms, with no specific products or results. It was clear that this was some kind of elaborate corporate takeover. Sarah felt her heart pounding. This was no longer doubt. This was proof. Thorne was not only trying to take down Alex, but he was also embezzling a huge amount of money from the very company he was a board member of. She realized how dangerous the situation was. If Thorne was exposed, it would be a huge scandal. But if he continued, Sterling Enterprises could be ruined. She had to tell Alex, but she was afraid. Would Alex believe her? Would he think she was trying to cause trouble? Or worse, that she had some ulterior motive? Their marriage contract was still in place, and that could complicate things. But her conscience wouldn't let her stay silent. She was determined to confront Alex, no matter what the outcome. Sarah picked an evening when Alex seemed most comfortable to talk. He had just finished a successful video call with his Japanese partner and was in a good mood. "Alex," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I have something very important to tell you. It has to do with Mr. Thorne." Alex put down his glass of water and looked at her intently. "What's wrong?" "Sarah." Sarah took a deep breath, then placed the documents Emily had given her on the table. I think Mr. Thorne is embezzling money from the company. Here's some evidence I've gathered." She explained in detail what Emily had said about the shell companies, the questionable consulting contracts, and the huge amounts of money that had been transferred. Alex took the file, his face slowly becoming serious as he examined each page. He was a talented CEO. He quickly recognized the signs of irregularities in these transactions. However, a part of him still felt incredulous. Thorne had worked for his father for a long time, was a veteran member, and despite his ambition, Alex never thought he would dare to do such a terrible thing. "Sarah, where did you get these?" Alex asked, his voice still a little skeptical. He didn't want to doubt Sarah, but this was a very serious accusation. "An old friend of mine who works at the company helped me. She saw things that were unusual, too." Sarah looked straight into Alex's eyes, trying to convey her sincerity. "I know this is hard to believe. Alex, I was shocked, too, but I think you need to know the truth." Alex was silent for a long moment. He stood up and paced the room. An internal conflict was brewing inside him. Should he trust his contract wife, whom he had only recently come to know, or a longtime colleague? Even though their relationship had been rocky, he remembered Sarah's words about Thorne, her astute observations. He remembered Thorne's pushy attitude toward projects, his opposition to Alex's plans for change. Finally, Alex stopped in front of Sarah. "I trust you," he said, his voice firm. "Not because of these papers, but because I trust your intelligence and honesty. Sarah, I've seen that all along." Sarah felt a great sense of relief. Alex's gaze towards her now was no longer distant or suspicious, but trusting and a little warmer. "So, what do we do?" Sarah asked. "We will investigate," Alex replied, his eyes flashing with determination. "But we must be very careful. Thorne is a cunning fox. If he knows we suspect him, he will find a way to cover up all traces." A secret alliance was formed. Alex, as CEO, began quietly reviewing all the deals and projects Thorne had been responsible for over the past few years. He assigned this task to a group of his most trusted internal auditors, asking them to work in absolute secrecy. Sarah, with the help of Emily and a few other low-level employees who owed Thorne favors or were disgruntled, continued to gather more information from behind the scenes. She had the advantage that Thorne and his cohorts completely disregarded her, seeing her as nothing more than a mobile boss. They never took her seriously. Sarah would often accidentally listen in on phone calls, pick up missed pieces of paper, or observe Thorne's suspicious encounters. Eleanor Sterling, when informed by Alex and Sarah, was not surprised. "I have long suspected that old fox," she said, her eyes sharp. "Your father is too trusting, but I am not. Thorne has always been too ambitious." Eleanor decided to join the alliance. With her connections and experience, she provided Alex with invaluable information about Thorne's hidden connections and his weaknesses. She also used her influence to protect Alex from attacks from Thorne's faction on the board of directors, who began to feel uneasy when they saw Alex's investigation. Working together in secret brought Alex and Sarah closer than ever. Together, they analyzed information, planned, and faced stress and danger. Dinners became less of a chore and more a place to share new discoveries, worries, and rare moments of joy when they found an important clue. Their relationship developed naturally, no longer forced by the contract. Alex realized that he loved Sarah's intelligence, courage, and kindness. He loved the way she looked at problems in a practical, yet profound way. Sarah also saw the real Alex behind the cold CEO exterior, a responsible man with his own wounds, and a desire for true love. One evening, after analyzing a series of encrypted emails that Alex's team had just decrypted, revealing further evidence of Thorne's network of shell companies, Alex took Sarah's hand. "Sarah," he said, his voice soft, "I don't know how to thank you. You not only saved the company, you saved me too." Sarah smiled. "We're a team, Alex." "More than a team," Alex said, looking at her fondly. "When this is all over, I want us to be a family, not because of the contract, but because of us." Sarah's heart fluttered. Was this a confession she wasn't sure? But she could feel the sincerity in his words and eyes. The deeper Alex and Sarah investigate, the more they discover that Thorne's plan goes beyond embezzling money. He is plotting a real coup by creating fake losses in projects Alex is in charge of, then buying up Sterling Enterprises shares at a discount through secret investment funds he controls. The ultimate goal is to take control of the entire corporation. The regular board meeting is coming up. Alex and Sarah know that this is the moment Thorne will make his move, possibly by issuing a vote of no confidence in Alex based on the failures he has orchestrated. They had to act first. Alex, Sarah, and Eleanor worked out a detailed plan to expose Thorne at the meeting. They gathered enough evidence bank statements, emails, recorded calls, and statements from several key employees who had decided to side with Alex after realizing Thorne's true colors. Thorne, completely unaware that he was being targeted, confidently prepared for his final move. He lobbied other board members, promising them benefits if they supported him. He was sure that Alex Sterling would soon be ousted as CEO, and Sterling Enterprises would be his. He could not have imagined that the Cinderella maid he had despised would be the one holding the keycards that could destroy his entire plan. The day of the board meeting arrived. The atmosphere was tense. Alex entered the conference room, Sarah at his side, no longer his decorative wife but a true ally. Eleanor was there too, her eyes calm but determined. Everything was ready for the final confrontation. The Sterling Enterprises boardroom fell silent after Sarah's announcement. Harrison Thorne, his face red with anger and perhaps a little panic, tried to maintain a false calm. "Ms. Sterling, what nonsense are you talking about?" Thorne growled. "Who do you think you are, slandering a veteran member of the board like me? These are baseless accusations." Sarah was unfazed. "Mr. Thorne, this is not slander. I have proof." She gestured to Alex. Alex stood up and connected his laptop to the large screen in the conference room. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice firm, "what my wife is about to present is not just about the Phoenix Tower project in Dubai that Mr. Thorne just bragged about. It involves a systematic web of corruption and bribery, spanning years, that has cost Sterling Enterprises hundreds of millions of dollars." Sarah began her presentation. Slide after slide appeared on the large screen, clear and concise. First was a diagram of the shell companies Thorne and his associates had set up in tax havens. Next were bank statements showing money being transferred from Sterling Enterprises to these companies under the guise of consulting fees and service fees for projects that were either fictitious or overstated. The specific amount $150 million over the past 3 years. Then there were encrypted emails between Thorne and shady financial partners discussing stock manipulation, siphoning off projects, and a plan to take over Sterling Enterprises. There were also recordings of Thorne's phone calls, in a patronizing tone, ordering subordinates to falsify figures, creating fictitious losses for Alex's Horizon Heights project in an attempt to discredit him. With each piece of evidence presented, Thorne's face paled. The other board members, initially skeptical, now looked shocked and angry. Some of those Thorne had recruited began to sweat. They had not expected Thorne's plan to be so sophisticated and vicious. "And here," Sarah said, her voice filled with emotion but still professional, "is the testimony of Mr. David Carter, the former CFO of one of Mr. Thorne's subsidiaries. Mr. Carter has decided he can no longer remain silent." A video played. David Carter, a tired-looking, middle-aged man, detailed how Thorne had forced him to falsify records and sign false documents. He provided more original documents as evidence. When the video ended, the air in the conference room thickened. Harrison Thorne slumped in his chair, his face as white as a sheet. All his confidence, all his arrogance was gone. He knew he had lost. Mrs. Eleanor Sterling stood up, her voice solemn. "I think there is nothing more to discuss. Mr. Harrison Thorne's behavior is not only a serious violation of business ethics, but also a criminal offense. I propose that the board of directors vote immediately to remove Mr. Thorne from all positions at Sterling Enterprises and turn all this evidence over to law enforcement." The vote was swift. Every member of the council except Thorne, who was too weak to respond, raised his hand in agreement. Justice had been served, right where Thorne had thought he could control it all. After the meeting ended, security officers escorted Harrison Thorne out of the building. The company's lawyers immediately began preparing documents for the FBI and the SEC. The aftershocks of the incident lingered, but a cleaner atmosphere began to return to Sterling Enterprises. Alex and Sarah were left alone in the large conference room. The afternoon sunlight streamed in, casting long streaks of light across the floor. Alex turned to Sarah, taking her hand. His eyes were filled with gratitude, admiration, and a deep affection he no longer cared to hide. "Sarah," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "I don't know what to say. You did what I, with all my power and resources, could never have done alone. You saved my father's legacy. You saved the company, and you saved me." He squeezed her hand gently. "When I proposed this marriage to you, I was selfish and short-sighted. I only saw a solution to my problem, not the wonderful person before me. I was wrong. Sarah, I'm sorry." Sarah smiled, a gentle, understanding smile. Alex, I don't blame you. Circumstances put us in that position. What matters is that we got through it together. Not just through, Alex said, stepping closer, looking deep into her eyes. Throughout this process, I realized something. I fell in love with you. Sarah, I fell in love with your intelligence, your courage, your determination, and your kind heart. I fell in love with you not because you were Mrs. Sterling, but because you were Sarah Miller, the woman who changed my life forever. Sarah's heart pounded. Here it was, the confession she'd been waiting for. She felt her cheeks burn, but she didn't look away from Alex's eyes. I love you too, Alex, she whispered. I love your strength, your responsibility, and the warmth you try so hard to hide. I've seen the real you, and I love it. Alex smiled, a bright and happy smile. He slowly leaned down, and they shared a kiss. No longer the awkward kiss of their wedding day, but a passionate, intense kiss, filled with all the love, trust, and trials they had been through together. Our contract, Alex said when they parted, his forehead still against hers, should probably be canceled. And instead, he knelt down on one knee and pulled a small blue velvet box from his pocket. He opened it, revealing a beautiful diamond ring. Sarah Miller, will you marry me again? This time, for love, forever. Tears of happiness rolled down Sarah's cheeks. I do. Alex, 1,000 times, yes. Alex slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly. In the weeks that followed, news of the Sterling Enterprises scandal rocked the New York financial world. Harrison Thorne and several co-defendants were arrested. The FBI and SEC investigations revealed more details about the elaborate web of corruption Thorne had built. Justice was being served. Thorne had lost everything: his fortune, his reputation, and his freedom. He faced a multi-year prison sentence. Sterling Enterprises, under Alex's leadership and the support of a new board of directors who now greatly respected Sarah, quickly overcame the crisis. Alex's reputation was greatly enhanced. He was praised for his decisiveness and transparency in handling the case. Sarah Miller Sterling, from a mysterious Cinderella waitress, suddenly became a media sensation. But she did not choose a glamorous lifestyle. She refused most interviews, only appearing next to Alex at important company events. People not only recognized her as the CEO's wife, but also admired her intelligence, courage, and dignity. Eleanor was extremely proud of her son and daughter-in-law. Her reluctant plan had yielded results that far exceeded her expectations. She often joked that her eye for people was still very sharp. Sarah decided to go back to college to finish the graphic design degree she had been forced to abandon. Alex was completely supportive of her decision. He knew that Sarah had talent and deserved to pursue her passion. She occasionally offered insightful input on Sterling Enterprises' marketing campaigns, and Alex listened respectfully. A year later, on a beautiful fall day in New York, Alex and Sarah celebrated their anniversary, or rather, their actual wedding, the way they wanted it. The ceremony took place in the garden of the Sterling family mansion, warm and intimate, with only their closest family and friends. Sarah wore a wedding dress she had sketched herself, simple, yet extremely elegant. Alex looked at her, his eyes filled with love. When they exchanged vows, there was no more force or calculation, only sincere love and the promise to go through life together. Sarah's younger brother, Ben, is now a brilliant senior, looking with pride at his sister finding happiness. Eleanor, healthy and happy, beamed at her children's joy. Alex and Sarah's life is filled with laughter and sharing. They run the company together, build a home together. The penthouse on Fifth Avenue is no longer cold, but more cozy than ever. They have learned to balance work and personal life, spending time with each other and with their family. One evening, as they sat together by the fire, Sarah leaned her head on Alex's shoulder. "Did you ever think it would end like this?" she asked softly. Alex smiled, kissing her hair. "Honestly, No. At first, I thought it was just a temporary solution, but you came along and turned everything upside down in the most wonderful way. Me too, Sarah said. I never imagined I would marry a CEO, let alone fall in love with him. So, we've written a modern-day fairy tale together. Huh, Alex teased. A very realistic fairy tale? Sarah replied, where Cinderella doesn't need a prince to save her, but fights for herself and finds love. A few months later, Sarah gave Alex the good news she was pregnant. Their happiness was doubled. They would soon welcome a new member to their family, a testament to love that blossomed from the most unlikely of circumstances. The story of Alex and Sarah proves that true love can come from anywhere, overcoming all barriers of social status or initial calculations. Intelligence, courage, and kindness will always be the most precious values. And sometimes, the biggest challenges are the opportunities for us to find our true selves and the true happiness we deserve. The happy ending is not only the fulfillment of love, but also the victory of justice and belief in the good things in life. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you love this story, don't forget to click like to support the channel. Share this story with family and friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories.